Okay, we're live. We're live, Egan.
He muted himself. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There he goes.
Excellent. Well, hello, my name is Colin, and welcome to episode 25 of Roll by Roll's Tavern Talk, a show where we, the Roll by Roll gang, discuss various aspects of running a great D&D campaign based on our experiences with D&D 5e and our current adventures in Emathan homebrew campaign. So joining me tonight are the rest of the Roll by Roll crew. We have Egan, who plays Douglin,
Hello, hello.
and Max, who plays Kogon.
Good eve.
Welcome, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
So, with our sort of smaller group we have right now,
Yeah.
I recently introduced some new NPCs that were working with the party fairly closely to help bolster your numbers as you were doing some exploring. So, we had with Tressa's hideout, and then most recently with the stronghold of the Order of the Timeless. So we had some NPCs in there. So we thought for tonight's episode, we'd discuss running NPCs in your campaign, the good, bad, and the ugly. So just for clarification right off the top here, um, we some people refer to NPCs as anyone that is not a player character. If you look in Fantasy Grounds, everything is just an NPC, basically. That is not a. What we're really referring to is not monsters so much, although a monster can be an NPC depending on the situation. But we're talking more humanoid character types that would be a part of the story in different ways where they may be a little more accepted just because it's one of the player character races. Not
Like an
always.
ongoing interaction with the party, basically.
Exactly. Yes. So thought we'd start out. Gave you guys a little lead time on this one, but we'll see what you come up with. Do you have a most memorable NPC, either when you were a player or when you were a DM? So Max, why don't you start us off tonight?
Sure. There's lots of great NPCs for sure that I've experienced, but the one that sticks out the most for me, I can't remember his name. It was a few years ago now, but I created an NPC in a game that I was DMing, and he was a halfling researcher at uh, like a college, basically, not a magical college per se, just a college. And the heroes encountered him on the road, and he had been just traveling, and he was camping underneath a little like rock outcropping, but the heat from the fire expanded some moisture in the rock, and so a slab cracked off and pinned him. And so he basically was lying there, and his arm was crushed underneath it. And the party encountered him and saved him, but the whole ongoing interaction with him, and the party was on the way to this mega city, and he was going to show them around, and they healed his arm, so he's got this kind of stub for a while and stuff like that, and he was all grateful, and he took it pretty well. And then the party is like, they're at this, I created this store called 3M Innovations, which meant Marjorie's Magical Merchandise. And there was all these really expensive, extraordinarily rare items, and one of the items there was a ring of regeneration. And he was like, "Could you guys please just buy me this ring? Can we work out a loan or something so that he could like grow his arm back?" Anyways, it was just ongoing stuff like that. It was fun. That's kind of the
Awesome.
one.
And that was you were DMing in that
I was
campaign.
DMing, yeah, I was DMing.
Nice. Egan, yourself?
Well, you guys think I was going to talk about the two most recent in Lyda and Broca, who are awesome, by the way. I love what they add to the campaign, but I'm actually going to go with the same campaign, but Anton,
Okay, well,
Douglin's
Anton's good. Yeah.
arch nemesis.
His
father-in-law.
arch
All right.
nemesis father-in-law.
Yes. No, he has been perfectly played by Colin as a passive aggressive, like not meaning to be an antagonist, not meaning to drive Douglin crazy, but everything he does drives him crazy. It has been some really fun role play between the two, and also how everybody loves him. How, and Douglin doesn't get it. This guy's a pain in the ass. He's full of shit. He's all, he knows way more than he lets on.
Blowing
No,
Douglin's
and
mind.
yeah, Anton has been fantastic. I really one of my favorite NPCs to interact with.
Cool. Yeah, it has been. I'm sure there'll be lots more. For me, the one that pops into my mind, so myself as a DM, and it was in our Storm King's Thunder campaign. I too cannot remember his name. I tried to find it, but it was the captain of the airship, so the dragon cultists, and uh, the captain and the crew and the party got to use this airship that was given to you by Koth to get around. And yeah, I sort of modeled him a little bit after Captain Jack Sparrow, so
Oh,
he was
nice.
very fun to play. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
there
all
were a
right,
lot of great ones in Storm King's Thunder. I just can't remember them all,
there
but
were,
yeah.
yeah. So let's talk a little bit about creating NPCs and creating memorable NPCs. There are times when you want an NPC. It's important for an NPC to be memorable. There's times when the NPC just has a very quick part to play, and then you move along. So um, just get into tips and tricks, things that we know and do. Max, what do you got?
Yeah, I for myself, I always keep my NPCs simple to start. And just I don't want to invest a ton of time in them. Same with it's the same with any sort of world building, right? So like I'll create an NPC, I'll have some basic background, some basic personality traits, and then just if the party gets more engaged with that character, we'll expand from there. Even if there's something really key, like if it's this like king of a castle and they're gonna get lots of quests from him or something like that. You know what I mean? Like I'm not gonna develop a ton unless they start interacting with him a ton. And so I just think that it's easier on yourself to not get too invested right away. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I,
And
I would agree wholeheartedly. Yep.
you don't have to. In my opinion, you don't have to try to make a character memorable. That'll start to happen the more the characters get involved. Like if the players really start to like latch onto this character for whatever reason, that's going to become memorable. You don't have to force anything. It'll get there. So that's
Yep.
that's my
Yeah. No, I definitely would agree with you on that one. I like to have some basic. Sometimes I'm pulling NPCs out of thin air
yeah.
because it's a innkeeper, it's somebody you stop and talk to, whatever. They don't really need to be memorable. They just have a quick part in there. Um, if it's someone I think will play a bigger part, I'll rough very basic stuff out, but then like you said, for the most part, you just let them evolve for
Yeah.
for me, right? Egan, yourself?
Yeah, I first of all, I will have a this was a trick I probably learned from you guys, but I have a list of what it 50, 60 NPCs, and you kind of just, guard one, guard two, shopkeeper one, cleric, whatever, kind of all your basics that you see in a town, and maybe a little note about an accent to just maybe bring a little bit to life. But if it's going to be an NPC that is, going to be part of the story, like, let's say maybe the big bad ugly at the end, um, I try to develop a little bit more, not so much backstory or anything like that, but more like of a personality. Like that's important to me. Like especially someone that will be involved, as you guys said. If it's an NPC that's just sort of a tavern keeper, but turns into something great, then that's sort of the whole part of role playing and rifting and creating something. But if somebody's going to be there, and I know it's going to be an interaction with the characters, I try to create a personality. One in particular was a one shot that I did. Reading the description of the character, what I got from it was he was a whiny little bitch. And when the characters got to him, I went all in, and the players were so annoyed by this guy. I even did a voice like, "What are you guys doing?" And I mean, they loved it. After the session, Barry, it was Barry and Nathan. They loved it. They absolutely loved. So I try to get a personality more than all of the numbers, if you will,
Yeah.
because that stuff will take care of itself.
Yep. Yeah,
Yep.
and
100.
you kind of touched on a key thing there that Max and I, if it is an NPC that you know is going to have a bigger
Yeah.
part in there, you can spend a little more time on them, right? But there are times too when you never expect an NPC to catch on so much, and it's there's some good random generators you can use to kind of fire up a set of traits if you find that your NPCs are sort of the same person all the time. If you're not good on the fly at just figuring out what that is,
Yeah.
you touched on one thing that I'm going to expand on a little bit is around unique voices for your NPCs. I know this is a thing that some people love and some people just loathe the idea of having to try and come up with a voice for every NPC. I enjoy doing voices, so I'll mess around with voices a little bit. Um, if that's not something you're good at, you can also, instead of a voice, it can just be a way they speak. Like maybe it's they speak really slowly or they speak really quickly or they
Change
sort
the
of
cadence.
mumble or
Yeah.
they stutter or whatever that will help make that person a little more memorable based on. Now it's important then that you remember that voice. um so that's another whole thing in itself. I play around with a voice changer every now and then just for a little bit of fun, to give a voice something a little different, and if really you hate voices, it's a way to do something a little different um, when you're
Those are
playing. But
awesome, Colin.
yeah,
Those are awesome.
but voices can also help make an NPC memorable. Like
Yep.
Yeah.
if you got kind of your static little group of voices you use for most people, but then when it's an NPC that you want to add a little emphasis to, you give them a unique voice that sometimes can cue the party that there's something different about this guy, right? So, Max, what else you got for creating in good
Oh,
NPCs in general?
yeah. I was gonna say, uh, whatever you do, just to have a little notepad with you so that if they do get more interaction and you start coming up with stuff on the fly, you can jot down some notes on like if you mentioned a sister or whatever, you know what I mean? Like just jot that stuff down because if they're going to return to that, it gives you some continuity and potentially some adventure hooks. Who knows? You know what I mean? Um, and then I also on the flip side about uh, over preparing your character, it can kind of create this slippery slope of wanting to inject more of them in
Yes.
when the players just maybe aren't really that engaged with them. And so, like, you're kind of creating this awkward sort of situation where you're
I,
giving
I
them
spent
more
a bunch of
screen
time
time.
on this
Yeah.
guy. I want to use him, sort of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
So, yeah, I would just be careful about that. And the other thing I would say too is just for the tables out there that are like this, you don't have to act out characters. You know what I mean? So don't feel pressured to do voices and stuff.
Yep.
It's fun for people who like to do that, but if you're not at that table, you can still have meaningful and engaging role play through description. You know what I mean? It
Absolutely.
doesn't have
Absolutely.
so yeah.
Yep.
It,
Egan?
Yeah, Max brought up a great thing. Have some notes because I would say, a vast majority of NPCs are going to grow based on the interaction that you have. And if you can just keep a little bit of continuity, it goes a long way. because they could become important. They could become, as you said, story hooks and whatnot. And to also go back to the voices, I know that right now a lot of people are getting introduced to Dungeons and Dragons because of professional voice actors are playing. You're not a professional voice actor, okay? So give yourself a break. It's okay. You don't have to be able to sound completely different, but as Colin said, change your cadence, talk a little slower
Try on
for,
an accent.
Yeah,
yeah, you
that's
don't
fair.
even need an accent
Yeah.
or high pitched. Oh, look, it doesn't matter. Just there are some though you're going to want to make a little unique, right? And if you're just speaking in your normal voice, it might be harder for the players to pick up that personality or something like that. So, you don't have to get crazy. You don't have to be Scottish or Irish or anything. If it's a dwarf, it's okay. Whatever works for you. But you may just want to have some sort of starting point with these NPCs. Max, you nailed it. Don't over prepare. I did on a one shot. You played in Francois Delacroix,
Oh yeah.
Captain Cross. I spent way too much freaking time on that guy, and they barely talked to him. Not
Yeah.
because of their fault. It was like the
It's a
fifth
one shot.
hour of the one
Yeah.
shot.
You got to
He
rush
was
through.
awesome in my head, and then, like it just did not translate. I love the guy. It's like, oh, what a killer name, Captain Cross. Yeah, no, it was. It just fell flat, but it's okay. It's also fun to make stuff up. So.
Yeah, and I mean when you're beyond the voice, as long as everybody can see each other, you can kind of throw in some body language too. Like there might be some sort of little thing that you're always like every time
Yeah.
every time
Yeah.
that person talks, and
Yeah.
Yep.
and then they, oh yeah, I remember this guy, because
Yeah.
he's always wiping his nose. And what one thing that is good if you're not good at whipping up NPCs on the fly is, we always suggest lots of stuff you read suggests have your little list of names, right? Which you can just pull a name out at any moment. But if you really struggle to kind of come up with unique NPCs on the fly, just give yourself a little note or something, a couple of little traits or something. One thing that I've done a few times is actually just look for an image. Like I'm looking for a dwarf or something, and I'll find an image and throw it in my notes, and I just sort of cue off of that image, that look, as to play that character that I can see in my notes there, and I find that works for me a little bit, to give each NPC a little bit of different flavor, right?
I literally put like if I have an NPC, I'll put like in parentheses Inspector Clouseau, and then I'll automatically go, okay, I know the voice I'm going to use for that.
Yep.
That's how I do
Yeah,
it.
that'll
Yep.
work. So let's move on to different ways that you can use NPCs in your story. So some of your ideas around how you can use NPCs, Max.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is pretty straightforward for the most part, but as quest givers, quest objectives, um, just oh wait, good. Actually, I think NPCs are the best way to give out world information.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Just talking with an NPC is a great way to learn for characters to learn about town and stuff without just uh you know uh you're using like prose anecdotes, you know what I mean? Like just it makes it more immersive if people are learning about what's around their area from a character, you know what I mean? So
Yep.
actually I think that's my favorite use of an NPC for sure.
Egan.
Yeah, I actually I think NPCs are a huge part of at least the games I run, for several reasons. The aforementioned story hooks, they can guide the party, they can get the party back on track. Like if the party is like, and I know it's an open world, but you got to have some plan for the night. And if they're just, oh, we're going to go off over here, an NPC can kind of say you don't want to do that. So it'll help also guide a little bit without railroading, if you will. Um, I also think the NPC as a enemy can be incredibly effective. One that comes in early and maybe is just overpowered for the party, either wounds or kills a party member or another NPC that was loved by the party and becomes sort of the arch enemy that either is, seen again or it starts them on their path to whatever the main story is. So I think NPCs as excuse me, an enemy can also be very effective. I also, and this might be a little bit of controversy, especially at the lower levels, I don't mind using an NPC that kind of has the healing thing. Like if you're playing one or first or second level where one hit can drop a character and it's not really that epic or anything, you may be able to slip in an NPC that has a revivify or resurrection or something like that to just not make it so harsh. Later on, the characters
Yeah.
probably have their own ways of doing that, but early on, dropping in an NPC that kind of comes in as a
Deus Ex
benefactor.
Machina.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not that out of place. I know there's some that say, "Hey, no, the dice rolls are the dice rolls." Well, we're all trying to have a good time, so that's how I
Yeah.
use them.
So, I definitely NPCs are always going to be very vital to your story, right? So, whether like you're talking about Max, where they're filling in details to help the party make decisions on where they should go, what they should do, what's available to them. That's a really common way to use your NPCs. Egan, you talked a little bit about, your villains and allies, basically, right? So, I mean, your villain might be a monster. Your villain might just be an NPC type character, and I really agree. I like the idea of for myself. I don't necessarily want the villains to only ever make one appearance. I like it when they're just they keep getting in your grill in various places in the story, and that gives you an opportunity to develop that NPC so that the characters start to learn more and more about them. But another way you can use your NPCs, um, and it sort of leans into what where we were at lately. It can add a skill set that the party might need to complete some quest or something that they're currently doing that maybe in that particular party they don't have that skill set. Like for instance, for you guys, obviously a thief would be a great thing. You've come up against a couple of doorways where having the ability to potentially break those open would be good. For myself, I'll talk about where we are in our campaign right now, where with the two of you, you have, at your current level, you have a really reduced action economy. And that limits my ability to throw higher CR at you because a lot of monsters, as they get into higher CR, get multiple attacks. So, all of a sudden, two or three monsters are getting six attacks against your two, and the way the rules are in 5e, action economy is really really important to winning or losing a battle. So
Hmm.
some of my thought around introducing some NPCs to accompany you guys just to bolster your action economy a little bit. So you get another couple of pokes at the monsters, but it gives me the opportunity to throw some bigger monsters at you, which are just
Hmm.
more fun, right? So
Hmm.
one way you can think about your action economy, I think Egan, you mentioned even just healing, right? Like you might have not have a way in your group to heal. You may be coming up something where there's going to be a lot of combat, and you're going to need some healing. So another way you can potentially use some NPCs. So um, Do you guys have any do's or don'ts around NPCs that you would share with a DM? Either one, a do or a don't, Max?
So I would say in the form of party assistants, keep them simple as far as their abilities. They're not there to be uh a PC created character. You know what I mean? And then my big don't is don't play that character as if it was a PC because you can't. You're not the player.
Yes.
You can't. You want to talk about like the ultimate form of metagaming in all of its definitions? It's a DM playing a character. It's impossible. You know what I mean? Like there's no game for you to play. You're running the game.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So just keep it simple, keep it assistance, and that way too, those characters, those NPCs aren't taking away from the cool abilities that
Yeah.
your players have. They're, like you said, just some assistance to help flesh things out. So that's my big thing.
Yeah, Egan?
Yeah, I would say a big don't would be don't do it for the players. I was mentioned earlier, you can use an NPC to kind of guide them and get them back on track, but you can't do it for them.
Yeah.
It can't be, oh, there's a secret password and oh, an NPC just happens to know the secret
Yeah.
password.
Yeah, that
Don't
sucks.
yeah, it's like don't do it for them. Give them hints, give them a little help, whatever the case may be, but don't do it for them. But do what Colin is doing, adding flavor to our game. We have great interaction between Kogan and Douglin. It's been fantastic with Lyda and Broca. Like they add a personality because again, we're just two right now. So do not be afraid to bring that.
Yeah.
And as Max said, keep it simple. They don't need to be superheroes. They just need to, shoot an arrow every once in a while
Take a
and
couple hits.
yeah,
Yep.
take some take some
Yeah. Eat
damage
up a
for
couple
us.
of the hits, couple of
Yeah,
extra
because
shots. Yeah.
as you said, as we get into tougher monsters, there's just two of us. There's a lot of creatures that can take a one PC out quick.
Yeah.
And now it's like, okay, well, listen, we face it, we'll try to figure it out. But there's nothing wrong with adding a little simple assistance to the group.
Yeah, I always sort of in my mind I sum it up is they are they have to be a support character, right? They cannot be, let the party be the heroes, and I always try and do that by putting those NPCs in a position where they are going to take direction from the party. So they're not going to make a bunch of command decisions unless, like you said, maybe they're a guide, so they're going to keep suggesting stuff, but not saying we need to do this or we need to do that. It's more like, oh well, we have a river to cross. Well, I know up the stream a couple of hours there's a boat that can take us across. But you guys look like you might be able to swim, so throw a
Yeah.
couple of things at the party, so now they have to make the decision as to what's going to happen, right? You just that NPC there is just offering up choices, and like you said, throwing a couple of extra arrows into the fray during a battle, right? So, um,
Broca was a beast last episode. Come on.
yeah, that one ghost, it was they were having a
Silent
go.
partner.
Yeah,
Yes.
they were having a go for sure. And that was one of those things with the ghosts. I was thinking to myself as I was putting that encounter together, like, oh dear God, if the ghosts possess Douglin and Kogon, this is
Oh
gonna
yeah, we're
get
screwed.
weird. Yeah, I'm just
Hey,
gonna do all the things myself. You
yeah, we're
guys
just
just
sitting
you
here.
guys just
Yeah, I was
hang
like,
out.
oh, this is a cool show. Yeah.
2 hours of Colin literally
Yeah.
running everything.
Yeah, because I mean, they wouldn't come out of that until they're knocked down to zero. So,
Oh,
yeah,
God.
it could have got weird. I'm glad there wasn't any possessions that occurred there. But
Love it.
yeah, any other do's or don'ts, guys? Anything else you can any time a DM has used NPCs that you really anything they didn't do that you were just
Hmm.
like, oh, I would never do that. I mean, often we hear stories like I read sometimes in the on Reddit. There's a Reddit thread about the worst DM experience people had, and
I
it
mean,
kind of touches on Egan what you were talking about and Max what you were talking about. It always seems to be people, in those worst stories so often it's where the DM had what was essentially a player character
Yeah,
who was the hero of the
yeah,
story clearly, and
I've
the
had that.
rest of the players were just support characters in that
yeah.
story, right? Yeah, it's
Find a game
definitely
to
on the
play in.
don't.
Yeah.
I will say I to me the going back to the don'ts and a bad experience was
Oh, I have a good
basically
one.
railroading. An NPC would just basically tell us where to go.
Yeah,
And obviously that's the DM speaking through the NPC, and it's like, it to me it was a form of not allowing also role play. Like it really just cut that off because when you have an NPC that is literally telling you where to go, you're not allowing the characters, even among themselves, to figure stuff out. And that's where a lot of fun comes, is that
Mhm.
interaction. And I'll go back to another do. Have some fun with an NPC. Have a clown. Have a guy that's not taken so seriously.
Yeah,
It's
whatever,
okay. It's a
whatever
great
fits.
way to just bring in all sorts of
Yeah.
personalities.
Um, I would say be very wary about acting dual dialogue between two NPCs. So, um, if there's going to be a lot of information, just say like these two have a conversation about this. Do you know what I mean? You're not unless you have something really riveting and you're a good showman and people are engaged about this back and forth between these two NPCs. I would really avoid. I've made that mistake before. I can speak from experience. I thought this was going to be awesome, and it was just too much information being dumped, and I was acting it out between two characters. I lost the table. I was like, and okay, but anyways, you guys are now like, you know what I mean? Like it was, and I learned a lot just from that. I'm like, no, just keep it simple, keep people engaged. They'll interact with what they wanna
yeah.
want.
I'll
Like a little
if
bit's
it's a
okay.
very quick little
Yeah,
exchange between
that's different.
NPCs, I'll do it. But I agree. Your window of opportunity when NPCs are talking amongst themselves is
Yeah.
should be very short. Before you're going to start losing everybody else to, oh yeah, can we play too?
Yeah,
you
they're
know,
just sitting
Pretty
in the
much.
background like this, like,
Dude, yeah, like I'm embarrassed when I think about it. I'm like, what was I thinking that session? I really wanted to like, I thought I was like going to be engaging my players. You know what I mean? Like fleshing this out, making it feel immersive for them. That was my goal. I wasn't
right.
trying to like put on a show for them. It was
right.
like to feel like they're there in the meeting room. You know what I mean? And like all this is going on, but it didn't turn out very well. So I was just like, just
Yeah,
keep it
no,
simple.
that's where you have to, you can even start off a scenario like that.
Yeah.
Like if it's a very intense moment, you might want to just play out the very beginning of it to build that
Yeah.
intensity, and then just montage how the
Yeah.
rest of it transpires, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Montage is your friend.
No, big time.
Montage is your friend.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, let's wrap this one up here. Why don't you finish us off there, Max? Any last thoughts around NPCs?
Sure. I would say just prep the bare essentials that you need for the role you need your NPC to fill, and then trust yourself to be able to improvise and adapt the character as necessary. And I think you'll have a far better planning session. Not so load heavy, and then I think you'll be free to kind of like lets the character really shine. Um, as you improvise them out the rest of it and stuff. The real character will kind of come forth when you start interacting with the players. So
Yeah. Yeah. Egan?
Yeah, I would say, prepare, have a list, whatnot, but your players are going to let you know if an NPC is worth diving deeper. And you might find it too. You may not even know what the NPC is until you start talking, and the characters love or hate or whatnot. We're not talking about NPCs that are, the ugly or the bad guy at the end. We're talking the ones that are trying to get you there. So, yeah, just feed off your friends and the table, and they'll let you know.
Yeah. My final thought is, and I want to kind of go back to something that Max talked about earlier. If you and I think it wraps up what we're all sort of saying here at the end. If you get too invested in NPCs in terms of preparing them, and you got voices and history, and you know who their fifth generation ancestors
Yeah.
were, you're so invested in that NPC, you are going to be too invested in wanting them to be a part of the story.
Yeah.
It's okay to put a little bit of structure together, throw it out there. If the party jumps on it, you can start building on it a little bit. But you don't want to get yourself to the point where you're like, I just really wanted the party to love this guy, and he's going to be their best buddy and everything. And yeah, just flesh out a little bit, see what happens when they jump on a particular NPC.
Yeah.
There's your opportunity to build out that NPC a little more.
I gotta say, Anton is a perfect example of that.
Yeah,
I don't think either one of us knew what direction that was going to go.
not at all. Not at
You
all.
know?
Anton has just built himself. Like
Yeah,
I knew that actually I didn't even know we were going to have this sort of the animosity sort
yeah,
of
yeah,
relationship. That just sort
yep,
of happened.
yeah. It wasn't in the backstory when I
No.
originally wrote Douglin. It just like, oh, this works. Oh yeah, this is
Yeah.
gonna work.
No, it's been fun.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, we'll call that a wrap for episode 25 of Roll by Rolls Tavern Talk. Hopefully, everyone that's watching this, everyone, I
Every
enjoyed this.
one.
Emphasis
Everyone,
on one.
emphasis on one. Tavern talks occur Thursday after each of our Saturday night adventures in Emathan sessions. So our next session is going to be on May 11th. We're taking a little bit of a break here because actually it was
Hydropose.
all Egan's idea. He wanted to take an extra break, so Max and I were like, whatever,
I guess.
fine.
Lies, lies.
Lies. For those of you that might be watching on YouTube, please support us by making sure you like the videos and subscribe to the channel. Hit that little bell icon and you'll be alerted the next time we have a tavern talk. So to end it off, guys, we'll do our traditional cheers. Thanks very much for joining us in the tavern, and hope you can join us next time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.